On Thanksgiving weekend, you are 10 years old and sitting cross-legged at your grandmother's house. The coins familiar clink. Your mother and sisters are laughing in the kitchen as you rummage through your collection, and the warmth of family fills the surrounding rooms. Everything appears to be safe and normal until your father enters the room with empty eyes that you have never seen before and a rifle in his hands. You are the only survivor of what follows, which includes your grandmother's frantic 911 call, your mother's last moments, your sister's last breaths, and an impossible question that will always haunt you. When Dad took everyone else away, why did he let you live? This is the tale of the Kayla family massacre, which is nearly too graphic to recount. On Thanksgiving weekend 2009, what should have been a cozy family get-together turned into an unimaginable nightmare when 89-year-old Dorothy Y. said these final words. As Dorothy's frightened voice cracked down the line, the 911 dispatcher could only listen. One officer later stated that upon first responders' arrival at Dorothy's farmhouse in Kansas, they were met with a spectacle that would haunt them for the rest of their lives.
I was saying to myself, what the hell? How many more could there possibly be?
Too many, as it turned out. Officers found death after victim in a blood trail that no one should ever have to witness. Dorothy in the kitchen. In the living room, Karen's 44-year-old granddaughter was dead. Emily, Karen's 18-year-old daughter, had attempted to hide behind the couch when they heard a 16-year-old voice speaking softly upstairs. Detectives were moved to tears by the sight of Lauren fighting for her life with her final breaths.
Lower right side was turning purple as I was watching it, so I could see the blood pooling up and turn.
She was pleading with them to save her life, but they had no time to cry.
Oh no, don't move.
Me there.
I know, don't move.
I don't want to die.
We're gonna take care of you, okay?
Leave me alive.
Bring me to life. Lauren had one last wish, but they were unable to fulfill it. As she was dying, she identified their killer as Craig, and when the police inquired who it was, she managed to say two last words. In addition to the tragically short lives of 4 innocent people, my dad's story about the Kayla family, whose love turned to obsession with control disguised as care, serves as a warning about the warning signs we frequently overlook regarding the thin line separating love and control, and how easily domestic violence can turn into deadly violence. Gazing at old Kayla family photos, you would notice that the photo was flawless as everyone else did. The American family. Like hundreds of others, Karen and James Craig Kayla met at Kansas State University, where their love story started. She was a self-assured freshman, full of potential and goals, and he was in his final year of engineering, already planning out his ambitious future. Their future appeared to be bright, as their firstborn Emily inherited her mother's intelligence and inventiveness. She was the quintessential overachiever, the student that teachers admired the most, and she made parenting seem effortless.
Emily was the firstborn, and she was a smart kid, a pleaser, wanted to do good, kind of like her mom, creative and smart.
With each accomplishment, she would make her family happy while she continued her pharmacy studies at St. Louis College. Their second daughter, Lauren, was a unique force in the family. She was the free-spirited, unconventional thinker who brought music into their home.
She was kind of silly, more of a creative, outside-the-box kind of a thinker.
In 1999, opportunity knocked Craig landed a prestigious position as a utility director in Weatherford, Texas. The salary was impressive, the community was welcoming, and the future was bright. The Kayla family moved into a beautiful house near Fort Worth, and Karen quickly became everyone's favorite neighbor, known for her warmth and generosity. The two girls formed an all-girls rock band, and their passion for music brought joy to everyone around them, even the neighbors who would come to watch them play. Sean was their youngest, about 6 years younger than Lauren, and they were loved by almost everyone. But we'll get to that in a moment. The neighbors were unaware that Craig's love for Karen had turned into something sinister, despite the fact that she would bake cakes for newcomers, give food to anyone in need, and their children were the kind that every parent wanted their kids to befriend. It began subtly, as it usually does, with a suggestion here, a demand there, and soon Karen was living under an increasingly strict set of rules that would have shocked anyone who knew their seemingly perfect life. Karen confided in her sister Lynn about the nightmare her marriage had become, and Craig imposed strict curfews, treating his adult wife like a teenager. He gave her an allowance and kept track of every penny she spent, required receipts to be shown for his review, and justified every purchase. What was most unsettling, though, was his insistence on having sex at precisely 800 p.m. every night. It's so strange that this wasn't about love or connection, but rather power.
If she didn't do what he wanted, bedtime at 9, she would, quote, pay for it.
This was incarceration, not love. Karen learned to live by following his rules, since it was simpler to do so than to deal with his anger. She saved receipts, arrived home on time, and complied with his demands in order to maintain harmony.
I found it just easier to go along with, okay, he expects this, so I might as well just do it, so I don't have to pay for it later.
This pattern of compliance, which was born out of fear rather than love, is exactly what narcissistic, volatile, and fear-based partners with historical tendencies rely on. Craig would later be diagnosed with both narcissistic and hysterical personality disorders, and his behavior was textbook. He knew that Karen was submitting out of terror rather than love, and he found that to be perfectly acceptable. This illustrates how deeply upsetting such controlling partners can be. They don't want love, they want ownership of their property. And fear is just as effective as any other tool to keep that control within. In 2008, as her spirit was crushed under the weight of Craig's control, Karen found her escape at a local gym. Between dropping the kids off at school and making dinner, she carved out a small piece of freedom for herself in those precious hours when she could breathe, move, and exist without Craig's suffocating presence. She was so talented and dedicated that they hired her as a fitness instructor, which everyone was surprised Craig allowed as long as she arrived home in time for his 8 p.m. requirement. Perhaps he believed that granting her this small freedom would keep her compliant in other areas. Maybe he just couldn't think of anything to protest, and that would make their friends suspicious. Karen met Sonny Reese, another personal trainer, at the gym, and the two of them quickly became friends based on genuine concern and respect for one another. For the first time in years, Karen felt like she was valued as a person rather than a possession, and their bond grew stronger until she soon realized something she hadn't felt in years.
My theory is Karen was so beaten down for so long. Finally, somebody took an interest in her in a positive way and treated her well.
When Karen found the strength to tell Craig that she felt something for Sonny, his response was surprising. He supported it, but not because he understood or cared. Rather, he saw it as a chance to indulge his own fantasies, seeing himself in a threesome scenario that demonstrated how he saw both women as objects for his enjoyment, rather than as sentient beings with their own emotions and desires.
It became obvious that Karen and Sonny were both interested in each other and not in him, and kind of started pushing him out of the picture. Then he became extremely jealous of that relationship.
Craig's domineering personality returned with a vengeance as Karen and Sonny's bond became stronger, excluding him completely. His fantasy had failed miserably, and his reaction would prove to be devastatingly desperate to separate Karen and Sonny. Craig planned to relocate to Columbia, Missouri, 700 miles away, and he accepted a new position as the highest-paid employee in the city, thinking that distance would destroy their relationship. He was forcing his entire family to relocate in order to keep control over Karen. By the way, this was his cue to end things with Karen. Why obsess over having someone who doesn't even want to be with you? His grand scheme didn't work out, as you might have guessed. Sunshine and Karen kept in touch via phone calls, texts, and covert meetings. They would meet halfway between their cities whenever possible and exchange lengthy emails. When they were unable to be together, their love grew stronger, possibly as a result of Craig's attempts to control it. Like any forbidden romance, the difficulties only strengthened their bond, and on New Year's 2009, they returned to Weatherford for the holidays. Everyone, even Craig, could now see that Karen and Sonny were in a relationship. Yes, Sonny was present, but they had stopped hiding it because of the way they looked at one another. Teenage daughters of Karen were aware of and supportive of their mother's happiness. They had watched their father abuse her all their lives, and they loved Sonny for her generosity and kindness. But to Craig and others, this was personal because his daughters had joined the enemy. That night, his control finally descended into violence, and after a furious argument, he shoved Karen, causing her to hit her head on the street for the first time. Karen sought for divorce because she genuinely feared for her life. A few days later, she moved into their spare room in the hopes that it would be sufficient to keep her secure. Craig's behavior became more unpredictable. He called Karen's family frequently, alternating between pleading with them to help her get back together and viciously spreading rumors about her. He called her derogatory names for having a lesbian affair and asserted that she wanted to steal his money and kids. When he wasn't harassing her, he was stalking her, breaking into her house to install hidden cameras and hack her emails. Karen knew exactly who was responsible when she discovered her car tires slashed, so she called the police, had him taken into custody, and gave a statement to the authorities. When money was an issue, I decided it was easier to give him what he wanted every night than to refuse on occasion. He has been known to be forceful and mean, and I'm afraid it will escalate further. Karen finally documented years of abuse, and over time, it became clear that Craig is controlling. I've learned that he can use force, and the issues vary, but I figured out how to keep things from getting ugly. That following the arrest, someone will suffer severe injuries. In order to maintain contact with his son, Sean, Craig cut off all contact with his teenage daughters, refusing to see them or even talk about them. He called Emily and Lauren rotting corpses, which is disgusting that a parent would even consider doing such to their children. But this is only the beginning of what Craig did by the summer of 2009. Craig's behavior at work had been even more troubling. He was erratic, showing his co-workers pictures of his family, leaving work unannounced to spy on Karen, and losing his temper at the slightest provocation. He was fired from his job in September, despite receiving 2 months' pay. His previous behavior made it doubtful that he would find work again, so he returned to living with his parents. His life was falling apart around him, but rather than taking stock of his actions, his preoccupation with controlling Karen only got worse. Karen, her daughters, and young Shah met up at Grandma Dorothy's farmhouse on Thanksgiving weekend, November 28, 2009. Dorothy had driven to Craig's family home that morning to pick up Sean, who had spent Friday with his father. Despite everything, they were attempting to establish a new normal and make happy memories, but they were unaware that Craig had other plans. Dorothy couldn't have predicted that she would be one of 4 casualties when she placed that frantic 911 call. When the first responders came, they saw an unfathomable sight of tragedy. Dorothy was shot numerous times, marking her last moments as she lay on the kitchen floor. Emily had made a feeble attempt to hide behind the couch in order to avoid her father's wrath, but Karen was in the living room. Only Sean survived after running to a neighbor's house, after seeing his father enter with a weapon and that lifeless expression in his eyes. Lauren was discovered upstairs, barely surviving long enough to identify their killer. When the police caught up with Craig Kaler 8 hours later, he approached them with an uncanny calm. The 10-year-old boy would later testify about cleaning coins when he saw his father enter and watched helplessly as his world fell apart. Imagine having the strength to testify against your dad after he destroyed your entire family and having to live with that memory forever. Additionally, to think that Craig Kaler sees himself as some sort of hero for saving the life of his favorite kid. They discovered a disturbing assortment of items, including ammunition, an unopened bottle of anxiety medication, cleaning supplies, canned food, and a backpack, everything needed for a planned escape. But what they found most chilling was his demeanor. "I'm the guy you're looking for," he said, as if he had just borrowed someone's parking space in his truck. This was all he said to defend his behavior. No regret, no feeling, nothing.
This doesn't look really very good, as you, I'm sure, can well understand. And
I messed up. Obviously, is the sun connection. I said, I'm just so happy if there's something you wanted to try, just don't want to lose you in the process. Just be careful.
right,
Just trying to be nice.
so what happened?
It just became just a relationship.
The Sunny connection, later one investigator said.
The biggest thing for me, and that I still have no answer for, is how a father can do that to his children. He literally had to chase one of his daughters through the house.
Craig's defense team attempted to claim insanity during his trial, claiming that losing his wife to another woman, losing his job, and returning to his parents' house had destroyed his mental health. They cited his unopened anxiety medication in his car as evidence of his mental state, as well as his diagnosed OCD, depression, and personality disorders, including hysteria and narcissism. However, the prosecution saw right through this. This wasn't an abrupt change. Rather, it was the result of years of domineering behavior and the last act of a guy who thought that no one else could have his family if he couldn't control them. Professional psychologists attested that Craig did experience mental illness. He was perfectly capable of telling the difference between good and wrong. For example, you can't just kill 4 people and then say, "But wait, I have anxiety," because that's not how this or any of this works. The law isn't that dumb. It realizes that many of us battle with mental health issues. Having mental health issues does not give you the right to kill people for free. Depression, anxiety, personality disorders, you name it. Pretty much everyone's brain gets spicily worked up sometimes. Does this person have mental health issues? Is the actual inquiry that courts ask. When they killed people, did they know it was wrong? Craig understood exactly what he was doing. Even during the trial, Craig's true nature was evident. He showed no emotion as the verdict was read, and victim impact statements were read. Craig asked to leave the room, but the judge made him stay and hear the consequences of his actions. He literally saved his son while killing everyone else.
Kaler showed no emotion today as he heard his fate. The execution sentence comes as retribution for the shooting deaths of 4 family members.
Court at this time sentences the defendant for the crime of capital murder to death.
James Craig Kaler opted not to speak on his own behalf and even asked if he could leave the room to avoid hearing the victim impact statements. Chief Judge Philip Fromm ordered him to stay.
I loved Grandma White, Karen, Emily, and Lauren very much. I will miss them until the end of my days.
Lynn Denton spoke of her grandmother, her 2 nieces, and her sister, the 4 women brutally murdered 2 years ago in Burlingame, Kansas.
I still want to pick up the phone and call her. Or when the phone rings, I want to hear her cheery voice say, "Hi, sister."
A jury recommended the death penalty for Kaler last month, but Judge Fromm had the final say. He also denied Kaler's motion for a new trial.
Even now, he continues to appeal his sentence, demonstrating no understanding of the devastation he has caused. Sean lives with his grandparents, graduated from high school, and works in Kansas, carrying an unfathomable burden of trauma and loss. He wrote letters from death row, expressing relief after killing his family, believing he had freed Sean from Karen's relationship with Sonny. One can only hope he finds peace despite the horror he witnessed. The Kaler family tragedy is more than just another true crime tale. It serves as a sobering warning that domestic violence frequently lurks behind flawless exteriors, and that controlling conduct isn't love, but rather impending violence. You should believe someone when they reveal their true selves to you through minor acts of control. Karen's tale serves as a reminder that it is never too late to pursue freedom, but that victims are most at risk when they attempt to flee. If you or someone you know is a victim of domestic abuse, get in touch with someone. There are people ready to assist. Remember Dorothy. Lauren, Karen, and Emily recall that behind their terrible demise, it was a tale of hope, of a woman finding the strength to be herself, of daughters standing by their mother's side, of love blossoming even in the most dire situations, and of keeping in mind that the warning signs of manipulation and control are never simply the way they are. Sometimes, as in this instance, they are life or death situations. And that's the end of this case, at least for now. What do you think really happened? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true crime stories. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.